And now, back to David Spada and Elliott Harris for more Sports and Torts on TalkZone.com.
Elliott, this interview we taped, I really had a lot of fun doing with Dr. Bobby Brown.
Very bright fellow.
I hope so. He was a cardiologist besides being a baseball player.
Yeah, I would hope so, too.
So we're going to get right to an interview with Dr. Bobby Brown, former New York Yankee and American League president.
How did a guy graduating school in San Francisco end up with the Yankees on the other coast?
Well, San Francisco produced a tremendous number of major league players. You know, Frank Rossetti and Tony Lazzeri are both from San Francisco. Lefty Gomez was from just outside of San Francisco. And we just had a tremendous number of players that went to the big leagues out of San Francisco, and in the whole Bay Area, really.
Were the Yankees a pretty tight-knit team when you came up there in the mid-'40s? Because I know in the '70s there was some friction there with the Yankees players.
Well, I will say this: the Yankee teams that I was on, we had zero problems as far as anybody that couldn't get along with everybody else. They had all good people. They had good ball players. We were devoid of any serious altercations or arguments or anything else. It was a total team concept, and everybody subjected their own desires and their own goals to what was best for the team, and that is why I think we were very successful.
Now, you went to college in an era when a lot of players did not. Was there any difficulty meshing, with the farm boys and folks like that on the big league team?
Oh, not at all. As I said, they were all good people. And, yes, there were different levels as far as education was concerned, but at the same time, they were all good individuals, and it was just a pleasure and a delight to be with all of them. They were just good guys.
I see that you didn't start saving lives when you became a doctor, that when you're in Stanford, there was a plane crash, and you got a medal for saving a Coast Guardsman's life?
That occurred, I guess, in May of 1943. And I was on the beach, and another Stanford student and myself were able to swim out to a plane that had crashed right in front of us, about 400 or 500 yards offshore. And there was a survivor that was floating in the ocean and not moving, and we could see that he was pretty helpless. And so the two of us went out and were able to bring him on into shore. The pilot, he was a radioman. His last name was Kind, K-I-N-D, and he survived and went on to continue serving in the Coast Guard in the World War II, and we still exchange Christmas cards. The pilot was killed. His body washed up on the shore, I guess, 2 or 3 days later, but he never did surface, and we never did catch a glimpse of him. It was a tragedy, but at the same time, we had the one survivor who did extremely well, both during the war and post-war.
In college, did you say to yourself, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a ball player? What was that time like for you?
Well, I was always a decent student, and I was a pre-med at Stanford, but I loved to play baseball, and I played fairly well, and I just felt that there wasn't any reason that I couldn't try to do both, and fortunately, I was able to do that.
And then I see that your roommate for the Yankees was Yogi Berra, and there was a famous story that Yogi was reading a comic book, and you were reading a medical book, and Yogi asked you how it turned out?
Well, that's correct. But Yogi and I roomed when we were at Newark, and at the end of that Newark season in 1946, Yogi and Vic Raschi, myself, and an outfielder named Frank Coleman all went up to the Yankees to finish out the season. So Yogi and I were together for a long time, and we were with Vic Raschi also.
So you knew Yogi Berra before he was Yogi Berra. Did you have any idea he would end up being a Hall of Fame catcher?
Well, you knew he could really play. There wasn't any question about that. He was a terrific hitter, and he just continued to get better as a catcher. And, of course, after about 3 years with the Yankees and whatnot, he was as good as they could get. He had tremendous ability. He was not only a great hitter, he became a great catcher. And the thing that people forget about Yogi was that he had good speed. He could run well, and he never had to be taken out for a runner. So he just was durable. He was easy to get along with, and had terrific baseball ability.
We interviewed Bill White, and we also interviewed Jerry Coleman, and both of them both said that don't underestimate Yogi Berra. This guy is a baseball mind. He knows that game backwards and forwards, and there are few people who know baseball like he does.
I would totally agree with that. There's nothing wrong with Yogi's mind.
But to look at him as a ball player, he wasn't physically imposing. He's about, 5'8", maybe 165 or something?
He wasn't 165. When he played, he was about 198.
Oh.
He was one muscle from his head to his feet. He was extremely strong, and as I said, he had great mobility, and he had a great arm. He had all the tools, physical tools. He just didn't look like he had them, but he did have them.
And then you had Mickey Mantle, who just looked like a chiseled sculpture there. I mean, that guy could do everything when he came up.
Well, Mickey probably had as much talent as anybody that ever broke into baseball. He had just tremendous speed, tremendous power, and he could hit from both sides. He had the whole package.
Could you tell early on in Mickey's career that this guy is someone special?
Well, when you saw him as a 19-year-old, when he came up to the major leagues, you just knew he, unless he got hurt, which is what happened. But at the same time, you just knew that he had all the great attributes of a tremendous star, and of course he satisfied those predictions, even though that he played most of his career under terrific physical handicaps.
What was your favorite moment in baseball?
Oh, I don't know. I have lots of favorite moments. I think. I know in the seventh game of the 47 series, I got a big hit early in the game that helped us win that game, and I got some other hits in the World Series in the 49, and the other that were very satisfying. I just had some great experiences with the Yankees. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't get a chance to play much in 52 because I got there on opening day, and I was going to be drafted back into the Army in July, so I was used very sparingly. And then I was in the service in Korea, in Japan, from 52 to 54, and I came back and only played a couple of months, and I went into my residency. And again, I just hadn't touched the ball while I was in the service, except for the first month I was in there. And I went on into medicine in 54, and I was, I guess, still 29 years old when I quit.
How were you able to continue your studies while you were still playing?
Well, I was able to arrange with the school that I was back in school 4 days after the season ended. That's how long it took me to get to New Orleans. Three days, and on the fourth day I was back in class, and I could stay until sometime in April. Usually, sometime between the first and second weeks of April, I would be able to get off and join the Yankees. But after 1947, I never did get to spring training much on time. And then I interned the same way. We had to intern for a full year when you finished medical school in those days. And I was able to secure an internship that allowed me to intern 6 months a year, and it took me 2 years to get the 1 year in. So I was able to combine both, and I was very fortunate. I was tremendously indebted to Tulane, where I went to medical school, because no one had ever done that before, and they realized it was something that was a little unusual, but at the same time, they put up with me, and I've always been very faithful to them ever since.
Baseball's changed a lot from when you played. I mean, it used to be people had off-season jobs, salesmen, either selling insurance, cars, or were in other professions. You became a doctor. Do you think that it should go back to that these players make so much money in such a short time period that basically they're kind of losing perspective what's important and what's not?
Oh, I don't know. Certainly the idea that baseball players, if they have a certain amount of ability in this day and time, can make almost as much money as they'll need for the rest of their lives, they can keep it, makes a big difference. But I think for many of the players that there's certainly has to be a life after baseball, and I think that just to sit around and not do anything for the rest of their life after they're through playing ball, I think that would be a disappointment for a lot of them. They have to do something that really contributes to society, I believe, and I think they all should keep that in mind.
Now, I'm old enough to remember when Will Harridge was the president of the American League and Ford Frick was the president of the National League. And I like that there were two distinct, separate leagues. What do you think of the consolidation? There's no longer league presidents, and it's just the commissioner's office.
Well, I think the disadvantage of that, of course, is it was tremendous rivalry between the two leagues. But at the time, of course, they didn't have free agency, and it was more difficult to trade interleague than it is now. So that if you played in the American League, you were an American leaguer. If you played in the National League, you were a National Leaguer, and that label was with you forever. And there was always a tremendous amount of discussion and argument as to which league was superior to the other. They would argue which umpires were better than the others, and so forth and so on. And the All-Star games were wars, and as were the World Series. Not that they're not now, but at the same time, I think the rivalry at the time the two leagues were separate, and they didn't have free agency, and it was much more difficult to trade between leagues. But I think the feeling between the two leagues was such that the fans were divided, and there was tremendous interest in which league was superior at the time, and of course it went back and forth as to which one was.
How did you become president of the league?
Well, then I was getting ready to turn 60, and I'd been practicing 25 years, and I was beginning to wear out. And initially, the ownership at the Rangers at the time asked me if I would be interested in applying for being the commissioner. Bowie Kuhn, I think, they had decided to make a change, and they were looking for a new commissioner. So I said, well, I'd be willing to talk to the people. And so I interviewed for a couple of times, but they then told me, which was a good decision really on their part, that they were looking for a businessman to be commissioner. And of course, I was a doctor. I wasn't a businessman at all. And they selected Peter Ueberroth, which was an excellent choice. And he was fresh from saving the Olympics in Los Angeles, and he did a great job as commissioner. And they asked me if I would consider being president of the American League, and Lee McPhail assured me that was a baseball job and I would enjoy it, and he was totally correct.
What part did you enjoy and what part did you not enjoy as American League president?
Well, I enjoyed pretty much everything. For me it was a great change from medicine. The problems were different. The pressure was different, and I just enjoyed it. And I was very fortunate. I had good ownership throughout the league, and I thought we did reasonably well as far as staying out of big trouble. And it was just a great experience for me. It was 10 years of enjoyable life.
Was there any talk when you were president of the American League about getting rid of the designated hitter or expanding it to the National League between the league presidents and the commissioner?
Well, I was never in favor of the designated hitter, and each year I would take a straw vote to see how many owners favored it and how many didn't, and it was just an extemporaneous thing. It wasn't anything that was set in stone or anything, and when I quit, it was the ownership was beginning to vote in favor of doing away with the designated hitter, but it never got to the point where we could do it officially or try to do it officially. It was I think a striking issue with the baseball union, and everybody knew that, and I think that exists to this day. So I personally have never liked the designated hitter. I think the average fan does because they think that there's more scoring and they enjoy that. But I like the idea that if you got 9 guys playing, they all have to play. But that's my own personal opinion, and which isn't worth much anymore.
Well, and also when you have no designated hitter, you tend to have a little more strategy in the game, it seems. You know, the American League manager can just sort of roll out his lineup, but the National League manager has to think about pitching changes and things like that.
Well, I think the big difference in baseball with the other sports is the substitution factor. In baseball, if you make a substitution, you lose the guy, the man that you're taking out of the game, and so everybody that plays in the game, you have to always count up their pluses and minuses and whether they should be in the game or out of the game. But I think that it puts a prerequisite on the fact that if you're outside of pitching, perhaps if you're going to be a ball player, you've got to be able to do lots of different things. You got to hit, you got to field, you got to catch the ball, you got to be able to run, you got to do all of those things. Whereas in the other sports, if you have certain talents, you can subject them to the proper conditions in the game, and you can put them in to take advantage of those, and then pull them out just as soon as that the need isn't there. And I think that makes the other sports different than baseball, and I think it makes baseball harder to play.
Is there a reason why in 92 or 93 that you presented the World Series trophy to the Blue Jays instead of the commissioner?
Oh, I don't think there was anything. I think it was a matter, if I did it, I don't even remember doing it, but it was a matter of just convenience. That was all. There was nothing behind it at all.
What do you think of baseball expanding its playoff format to add an additional wild card team this year?
Well, again, I think that the big advantage that we had when we played with the team that won the most games and was the ultimate champion. So you always had the 2 best teams playing. I think the playoffs did away with that, but at the same time, I think the fan interest is maintained to a very high degree because of the playoff situation, and I think the fans themselves probably enjoy that more than the old way that we did it. I think as a purist, it was always nice to have the 2 best teams playing in the World Series, but I think now that the month of September can be exciting for a whole lot more people because their team might be in the playoffs.
Do you think that Pete Rose or Shoeless Joe Jackson, either one of them will ever get in the Hall of Fame?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
We talked to Moose Gowron last year before he passed away, and he mentioned that every year he would get closer and closer to home plate at the Yankees old-timers games. Do you go to those games at all?
The old-timers games?
Yes. Do you still go to them?
Yes. If I'm invited, I go, and they've been very nice to invite me. I can't play, obviously. I'm going to be 88 in a month, but at least I go there and try to hide so I don't get hit with a ball and get hurt.
You can still move fast enough to not get hit?
Well, hopefully, yes.
How did you end up in Dallas-Fort Worth to practice medicine?
And when I was in medical school, I became very good friends with the doctor that was older and ahead of me. He was a senior resident in internal medicine at Tulane and at Charity Hospital, and we became very fast friends. And he was very helpful to me as a student. And we maintained our friendship, and then he went to Fort Worth to practice. He took a position after he got through with his training, and he was in Fort Worth practicing. And about the time that I got through with my training, he had switched his practice to doing cardiology, and I had an extra year of training in cardiology. They didn't have any formal residencies at that particular time in cardiology. But I wanted to practice that, and so he was looking for a partner, and he called me, and I said, "You bet, I'll join you." And the fact that if it had been in Nome, Alaska, or anywhere else, I'd have joined him because we were that close. And I came to Fort Worth, and it was a great move. It's a great place to live, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed it.
You've seen a lot of changes in cardiology from the time you started till now.
Tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. And the intervention techniques and what they can do now, of course, is just borders on the miraculous. And it's just terrific what they're able to accomplish.
Was there one pitcher that you enjoyed facing during your career?
No, they were all tough.
Did you have a favorite teammate?
No, as I said, of course, as you probably know, that I grew up with Jerry Coleman and Charlie Silvera. We're all the same age. We all played together in San Francisco. We were in different high schools and played against each other. But on the weekends, we played together, and of course, we were on the Yankees together. So we've been great friends, all of us, since we were 16 years of age, and we're going to have a reunion in a couple of weeks. They're honoring Jerry in San Diego, and Charlie and I are going to be there to be with him, so that's fine. But all of my teammates on the Yankees were good friends, and we've stayed in pretty close contact throughout our lives, and of course a lot of them are gone now. But it was just a wonderful bunch of people that we stayed in communication with throughout most of our adult lives.
You got to get Jerry Coleman, though, to do one thing. We interviewed him last month, and he mentioned that he has never flown a plane before or after the war, which is shocking, being that he's been based in San Diego for years. You got to convince him to get behind those controls one more time.
You got to be kidding me. He'd be the biggest menace that ever got into an airplane. Tell him I said that.
Elliott, another great show. You brought the lovely lady. I brought the former athlete.
Let's keep it that way, shall we?
Thanks for listening. We want to thank our guests, Pilar Lastra and Dr. Bobby Brown, and our sound man extraordinaire, Dave Olson. Thanks for listening to Sports and Torts here on TalkZone.com.